And this just in at the news desk here at WHRT. The pressure is mounting and couples everywhere are requesting quarantines from their spouses due to the COVID-related stressors. Masks that hide facial expressions of disdain, a shortage of cleaning supplies, and not enough hugs from the grandkids. It's just all too much. Heartbeat for Life of Licking and Muskingum Valleys in central and eastern Ohio can't help. It is said that laughter is the best medicine. Following this newscast, you'll have the opportunity to laugh at the joys and strains of married life. Better yet, let's make it even more fun and help other couples and families get through these challenging times. Right now, the Ministry of Heartbeats is facilitating their first ever virtual Bottles for Life campaign. COVID-related concerns led to this decision, and we can help them fulfill their 2020 Bottles for Life budget by giving a generous gift online right now at hbfl.us. That's Heartbeats for Life. You want to look it up. Click on Bottles for Life, then give your online gift on the campaign page and watch the live update after your gift helps Heartbeats fulfill their $70,000 campaign budget. These are much needed operational funds to continue to offer essential medical services through 2020. This has been a challenging year, but Heartbeats has remained open and is committed to offering alternatives to abortion. Please go online now and give your gift before you settle in for the almost live comedy sketch that follows. Again, that hbfl.us, Heartbeats for Life. Click on the Bottles for Life and give your virtual gift on the campaign page. A $40 gift will cover all expenses of a pregnancy test, including a client being met by a nurse and their own client consultant. A generous $400 gift will provide a free ultrasound for a woman who may be considering abortion. Please do what you can. No gift is too small. If you prefer to extend your gift by check, please send your contributions to Heartbeats Admin Office at 336 East Main Street, Newark, Ohio. That's 336 East Main Street, Newark, Ohio, 43055. Do it now before the end of the month. And now for something entirely different. Hi, I'm Doug Lynn, and I've been married for 45 wonderful, happy years. Thank you. Thank you. I really think it's great. 45 out of 50 years is really not bad. I mean that's a pretty good average. Marriage, in all seriousness, marriage is a wonderful institution if you want to be institutionalized your entire life. I mean, it can be trying at times. Although people say, and you've heard it, marriages are made in heaven. But remember, so's thunder and lightning. It can get kind of tough. There's a lot of jokes about heaven and stuff, and there was a couple that was always fighting. And they were pretty animated about it, pretty passionate. And so they were in the car, they were driving along, and they were just bickering and picking at each other. And all of a sudden they were losing track of what they were doing, and they went off the road and hit a tree. Tragically, the husband died first. I mean, it was so sad. But when he woke up, there he was in front of the pearly gates. And he thought, wow, I didn't think I'd ever make it this far. So Peter kind of motions him over, and he said, wow, I'm so thankful to be here. He said, well, before you come in, there's going to be a test. And the guy goes, oh, man, I was not very good in school. He said, we know that. And he said, it's going to be a spelling test, Peter says. He goes, oh, man, I was always the first one out in elementary school. He goes, well, okay, give me the word. He goes, love. The guy goes, love, L-O-V-E. He says, enter in, my son. So he comes inside, and he's watching everybody, and people are greeting one another and this kind of stuff. And pretty soon, Peter comes over and taps him on the shoulder and says, hey, I've got to go to the other side of heaven for an errand. Could you take my place? He said, yeah, I think I can do that. So he's standing at the gate, and people are coming up, and he's asking him to spell cat, dog, bird. It's pretty good. Well, eventually, his wife comes up. She dies later in the hospital. So she gets up there, and she says, this can't be heaven if you're here. He goes, yeah, it sure is. She said, well, step aside, because if they let you in, they're going to let me in. No, wait a second. I'm in charge. He goes, well, this can't be heaven. He says, there's going to be a test. She goes, well, you know I was valedictorian of my high school class. Yeah, I know that. And it's a spelling test. She goes, well, you know I was spelling bee champ 3 years in a row in elementary school. Yeah, I know that too. And she says, what's the word? He goes, Czechoslovakia. There was another couple that had tragically died in a car wreck, and they both went to heaven. Well, it was wonderful. Peter was showing them around the mansion. He said, over in this room over here, we have all the cakes and pies and desserts. He says, there's no diabetes up here. He said, none of that. He said, over here we have all of our bacons and hams. He said, there's no cholesterol up here. So he's thrown through all the rooms and all the delicacies, lobster and shrimp. And the wife looks over at the husband and says, hey, you look kind of down in the mouth. What's wrong? He said, if you hadn't been feeding me that darn oatmeal all these years, I'd have been here sooner. All right. I found, I've been a counselor for a lot of years, and I find that opposites attract before marriage. But I've also found that after marriage, they irritate. And that's the problem. We have these times when we just think, what was I thinking? I was at a party and I overheard, I was actually at a football party, so a bunch of us guys were sitting around watching football, and the wife came in and she was bringing in, refreshments, and she said to her husband, she said, I was a fool when I married you. He didn't even look up from the screen. He said, yes, I know, but I loved you. My wife is a forgiving wife. She's a forgiving spouse. She forgave me a long time ago for not being Brad Pitt. I wanted to say Tom Selleck, but some people don't even know who that is. So, Brad Pitt, she forgave me. We were really young when we got married. I mean, really young. We were a 4-H project that got out of hand. And when we were young, speaking of hands, we were young. We held hands. We were clinging. We thought it was so romantic to hold hands everywhere we went. Now, at our age, we hold hands to keep them falling down. Actually, no, real seriously, I hold my wife's hand all the time because if I let go, she shops. And there was a guy that I heard, and he went and reported to the police that his credit cards had been stolen. And the policeman looks at the report he writes. He said, you said these credit cards were stolen 6 months ago. He said, why are you reporting them now? I said, well, quite frankly, the thief hadn't been spending as much money as my wife had. Now, I'm a pretty domesticated guy. My mom, she domesticated me, and I try to help out around the house. Well, my wife, she washes the clothes. She dries the clothes. She folds the clothes. But every once in a while, I put the clothes away. So one day I was putting away all the delicacies, all the lingerie in her drawer. And as I was there, I noticed there were 3 kernels of corn and $500. Well, this was a few years ago when my wife was working. I thought, well, she's just saving up some money for a special occasion. But the 3 kernels of corn really bugged me. And so I went to her and I said, hey, honey, I was putting away your lingerie. What were the 3 kernels of corn? She goes, well, kind of embarrassed to tell you this, but every time you preached a bad sermon, I would put a kernel of corn in that drawer. And I was pretty proud of myself. I thought, over 40 years of preaching and only 3 kernels of corn. And then I thought, well, what about the $500? She said, well, every time I got a bushel of corn, I took it to the mill and sold it. Yeah, wife can put you in your place. I want you to know, it may surprise you, but in our marriage, I do most of the talking. Yes, dear. You're right, sweetie. I'll never do that again. What was I thinking? So, I get some words in. I knew a guy once, though, who said he hadn't talked to his wife in 4 years. I said, you haven't talked to your wife in 4 years? Why? He said, didn't want to interrupt her. Now, I try to get the last word in, and Sweetie and I, we don't have many arguments, but every once in a while, we'll get into a lengthy discussion, and I just like to get the last word in. Well, we were driving along, going to the local Piggly Wiggly grocery store, and she was looking out her window, and I was looking out mine, and all of a sudden I spotted a herd of mules. Mules are stubborn animals, and they were off in a field. And so I said to her, hey, honey, look over here. There's some of your family. And she looked over and puffed and said, yes, by marriage. I was at a local senior center not too long ago, and they were having a special honoring of people who've been married over 50 years. And so a cub reporter was there for the local little news rag, and he goes up to one of the few men that was there, had been married 50 years, and he said, sir, he said, can you tell me what is the secret of being married 50 years? He says, well, son, he said, when we got married, my wife and I came to an agreement, and it was that if she had something that was troubling her, she was to get it off her chest right away. Don't let it simmer, don't let it seep. So now my agreement was that if I had something that was bothering me, I was to take a walk and think it over. I said, son, I've largely lived an outdoor life. As I said, I've done a lot of marital counseling, and one time a couple came in, and it was an older couple, and it seemed to indicate that they wanted a divorce. Well, when they came in, I couldn't understand. I mean, what was going on, and nobody wanted to say anything. So I said to the husband, I said, what's the problem? He said, ask her, she knows everything. So she started hemming and hawing, and I finally, just in frustration, I said, well, ma'am, does he beat you up? She goes, oh no, I get out of bed before he does. And I said, well, do you have a grudge? She goes, no, we have a carport. And I said, well, what kind of grounds do you have? And she says, oh, we don't drink coffee, we drink tea. So I turned to the husband, I said, I'm at a loss here. He said, me too, we can't seem to communicate. All right, well, you get all kinds of, I had a couple that obviously the guy was just not appreciating his wife. Didn't appreciate everything she'd done, and meals and this and that, and he would go off with his buddies all the time, and it had been a long day for me. So this is the only time I've ever done that, before or now. And so I got from behind my desk, and I came up to the wife, and I put both my hands on her shoulders, and I gave her a big kiss on the lips. And I turned to the husband and I said, she needs this twice a day, 5 days a week. He thought, he said, well, I can bring her in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I bowl. There was another husband and wife came in, and it was, they hadn't been married very long, but obviously they had a whirlwind romance and didn't know much about each other. Finally, in frustration, the wife turned to her husband. I said, I bet you don't even know what my favorite flower is. Yeah, I do. It's Pillsbury, isn't it? Some guys can be really, really insensitive. They are. I try to pick up on my wife's little hints and innuendos. You know, men really expect you to read between the lines, and women expect you to read their minds. So one day I was going out the door, make some calls, go to some meetings, and my wife said to me, she said, remember, today's a special day. And I thought to myself, what? So going out, I thought, it's not our anniversary because it's tattooed right underneath my ring here. And so then I thought, well, you know, we just had her birthday a couple months ago. I bet it bugged me all morning. So about midway through the morning, I stopped at a flower shop, and I got a dozen roses and had them sent home. But by the middle of the afternoon, I thought, I don't know what kind of day this is. And so I picked up a big box of chocolates, you know, the ones with the cherries and the liquor. But anyhow, I picked up her favorite box of chocolates, and I brought them home, and we got to the door, and I said, honey, I want you to get dressed. I'm going to take you out to that fancy restaurant you've been asking me to take you to. I said, doesn't matter what the expense. So we go out, and we have a fine meal. We enjoy ourselves. And later that night, we're snug in our little marital bed, and I turned to her, I said, honey, was this a special day for you? She said, yes. This was the best Groundhog's Day I've ever had. So, sometimes we miss those cues. Now, this is a true story. My wife and I were in bed one winter night, and we were all snug, and all of a sudden I had a gaseous expulsion. You know, a fart. Okay, let's just be plain about it. So I, let out a big chuckle and stuff, and she just kind of rolled over, and I said, what's wrong, honey? And she goes, well, why do men think that farts are funny? And I said, my best counseling voice, I said, actually, honey, men are little boys at heart, and men like to make noise. I said, what's funnier than making a noise through a hole in your butt? Didn't seem to impress her at all. I have found as a counselor that there's one problem, and the word is change. A woman always marries a man hoping that she can change at least one thing. You know, that thing their mother didn't get around to finishing. Men, on the other hand, will marry a woman hoping she will never change. The way she looks and the way she responds to him when they're courting. And some guys are better courters than they are couplers. But we need to understand that we are different. And if we take those differences too personal, then it's going to cause problems. Concluding here, there was a poem, a bit of prose called Everything I Learned in Kindergarten. It was a wonderful thing. It was a pastor that actually wrote it. And in it, he reminds us that as we go out into the world, we should watch out for traffic and hold hands. And then it goes on to say that we should remember the first word that we learned. Now, for some of us older folks, it was a Dick and Jane book. And the first word was look. Look. And so I would say to you, that if we looked out for each other and hold hands more often, marriage wouldn't be such a joke. Thank you. Thank you. Now, before we conclude here, I want to remind everybody to invite you to join hands with Heartbeats for Life. That's HBFL.us, Heartbeat for Life. Look it up. Do it now if you can. Do it also before the end of this month. This is Heartbeats for Life. It is about medical conditions for couples and for women. Make a difference in your life right now. Join hands with Heartbeats for Life. Thank you.